Hi, Adam. Thanks so much for joining me today. Super excited to hear more about you and about the fish on the wall behind you. Could you maybe
Thanks,
start off
Caroline.
with giving a brief introduction, your spiel?
Sure. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and have been in med device for 20 plus years as an individual contributor and as a sales leader. And I have worked for some amazing companies and have had great teachers and mentors, and am excited about my next chapter. And as far as the picture of the fish on the wall, my dad raised us fly fishing when we were little. We also fished in his pond that he had in his backyard. But we have a lot of fond memories with my brother and my dad. And we recently went out to Montana and fished the Bighorn. So it was a great trip.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually just read a book that mentioned the bighorn, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful country.
Well, to get started, from Medtronic to early stage healthcare startups, you've really led at every stage of growth. What's the biggest difference you've seen in commercial strategy across company sizes?
I think the biggest difference that I've seen for commercial strategy that spans different sizes is, one, the approach to planning and experimentation. In startups, you're building the engine as you're driving, and there's an imperative to embrace first principles thinking, which is something that Elon Musk has um, pioneered and championed. And it's really reducing the basic fundamental truth or thinking down to those fundamental elements, and then building yourself up, building those elements up from the ground floor, not making assumptions. And so it's important to take calculated risk and to ensure that you're focused on the right thing. I think the other thing is risk. In smaller companies, it's important to de-risk the investment and de-risk the business. So much rides on every decision. And many times in a smaller company, they can metabolize risk a little more than larger companies that are well diversified and support a broad portfolio. And I think sometimes when I've been at larger companies, there's this ethos of playing not to lose, and because there's so much at stake. And then in a startup, you play to win because you're seeking to survive, not just thrive, but survive. And then I think the third piece is in product development. Startups generally start with a minimally viable product or MVP. And whereas larger companies will have these linear waterfall developments that will release a 2.0 or a 3.0 version. And I think lastly is transparency. Startups need to be transparent and agile in their decision making. And larger companies can be transparent too, but sometimes it's opaque because you have this top-down approach and multiple layers of management, which sometimes can impact a company's agility.
Yeah, just going back to one of your points, I really loved how you said startups work to win rather than work to stay alive.
Hmm.
Um, that's a really great way to put it. Uh, in your years, you've hit sales quotas 23 out of 24 years. How do you keep that level of consistency, or what drives that?
Hmm. Yeah, I know that Bill Belichick and Nick Saban and some of the great football coaches always talk about consistency and performance, and it is an important element of not just individual performance, but a company's performance. I remember Jim Collins wrote about who luck in Great by Choice, and he refers to the fortune of encouraging or encountering these great people that he was surrounded by. And he also distinguishes between random luck, like winning the lottery, and who luck. It's the people that you come in contact with and how it impacts your character and opportunities and how you grow as an individual and as a company. I've been really lucky to work with great companies and great leaders. I really have. And so I attribute a lot of the success that I've had because I've been lucky to work for companies that have had products that solve an unmet clinical need. And I've had great leaders that have challenged me, encouraged me, and have provided great leadership. There are 5 things that I learned early in my career that are, I think, important that have contributed to my consistency. One is people, being around individuals who have a positive attitude, who are accountable, that drive the right actions and behaviors, being part of a winning team. And then the product, it needs to meet an unmet clinical need. It needs to have a high quality, um, and it needs to do what it says it will do, because that builds trust with customers. And then there's a plan, there's a strategy and a focus, and adhering to that every day. And then a process, it's your sales process, and it's how you ensure excellence gets done. Um, and then there's performance. Those are the big 5: people, product, plan, process, and performance. I'm not the first one to ever say that, but it's contributed to my consistency.
The 5 Ps.
The 5 Ps.
Is there a go-to-market framework that you find yourself returning to time and time again?
I think the simplest way to respond to that is it all revolves around people, strategy, and execution. But I think when you look at the core elements of a go-to-market strategy, I think about opportunity, which is your TAM, your SAM, your SOM. And then is there an unmet clinical need that the company, the product, the service is trying to solve? It truly needs to be a need that people, the customer, consider we're solving. And then what's the product differentiation? And then you need to have a strong value prop that has clear messaging, and there needs to be a clinical and an economic value. And that gets at value-based healthcare, which today is imperative for companies to be able to deliver on value-based healthcare. And then there's segmentation. Why is this solution important and who's it for? And then regulatory, key opinion leaders are important in crossing the chasm from those early adopters and innovators to the early majority. And then your commercial strategy, it's rooted in talent, how you'll manage your sales channel, pricing, marketing, demand gen, and metrics. Those are the ones that I consider important, not necessarily in all that order, but pretty close to it.
So you also have a lot of coaching experience, and
Mhm.
at Venturous, our network is made up of leaders, executives, coaches, mentors, advisors within this space. And you've coached 15 President Clubs winners, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What do you look for in sales talent?
Well, I first look at what the role needs, because I've worked for different companies that have required a different combination of talent and experience. So it's first important to understand what that role specifically needs, and then to build a hiring scorecard, and then work with recruiters and your own network to identify top talent. It's top talent's the lifeblood of any great organization. And during that interview process, I look for character and integrity. Can I trust them? I can't put in what God left out, as Marcus Buckingham wrote in his book, First Break All the Rules. So you have to look for those intangibles, such as competitive character, resiliency, and grit. And I believe in top grading interview approach, where you look at an individual's past and why they made certain decisions and what they learned. Because, and I believe in hiring hard and managing soft, so you ensure you get the right talent. But the big 5 for me are motivation, influence, work style, relationships, and strategic thinking. Are they motivated? Can they influence individuals in a selling capacity? And influence is important for every role, whether you're in sales or not. And then how do they work? Do they work hard? Are they consistent? And then can they build relationships and work cross-functionally? And then do they have the capacity to think about business? Do they have business acumen? Can they think strategically?
As a leader and coach and executive, all the things, how do you create and sustain high performance cultures?
Well, I think culture is an everyday pursuit. There are no days off. Just like in conversations, you never leave a conversation neutral. You either move it forward or it goes backwards. And I think that is true for cultures. So every interaction, every decision has the ability to impact the culture. I almost see culture like a garden. You can have a beautiful garden one day, but if you're not constantly tending to it, the bugs and the fungus and the things that the weeds will come in and take over the garden. So it takes constant attention. And then values are critical to creating alignment and creating something that's missional and meaningful, focusing on the future and the vision, reminding people that they do work that matters, whether they're in the back office or the front office. And then there needs to be transparency and authenticity. I think a lot of companies talk about vulnerability thanks to Brene Brown, and transparency is really important, but I think companies can struggle with being vulnerable because it takes risk. And I think people like Kim Stott and her work, Radical Candor, are tools that we can employ to lean into hard, crucial conversations. And I think we have to empower employees to do their best work, and we need to reward them and recognize great performance. And then we need to monitor and manage engagement. I think Gallup's Q12 survey is the best way to a simple way to assess your current engagement. At the end of the day, it's all about people, 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 and investing in your people. And every person in your company makes up your culture.
I really appreciate your touch on vulnerability in a culture too. Like, I think it just kind of plays to people want the truth, and it builds transparency and trust and all the things that are necessary to have, a blossoming garden,
Mhm.
right? When you're executive coaching, how do you build trust and alignment? Speaking of, culture.
Yeah, I think building alignment and trust with executives and anyone in the organization, I think it starts with listening and caring. I think we need to listen to understand, not listen to answer. And I believe that everyone, e- all humans belong. I believe that all humans have a desire to belong and matter and be seen and heard. And so when an individual pauses and listens to where they are and where they want to go, their aspirational goal, it's important to really be dialed in on that. Because, for example, about 3 weeks ago, I had a conversation with an executive, and they were in this place of uncertainty and fear, and they wanted to move to a place of confidence and optimism. And so it's important to know what they want, and then it's important to understand what are the obstacles in the way and where are the challenges. And then to understand that and why that is a challenge for them, and then to listen with empathy so they feel seen and they don't feel alone. Because whether you're a CEO of a large Fortune 50 company or you're a small startup, most leaders feel alone and they feel like um, they have to be all things to all people. So connecting with them is really important. And then, how we respond to the challenges is important in establishing trust and credibility. I think some clients want direct answers and others want to be led to the truth that they already have within themselves. And I think you have to balance that. And there's a call to action. I think with all great coaching, whether it's with executives or individual contributors, it's about having a follow through plan, a call to action, and holding people accountable.
What role would you say storytelling plays in driving sales performance?
I think storytelling plays a performance in every role. I know I've worked in the med device space, whether from the C-suite, trying to raise money, or responding to analysts, or casting a vision. Storytelling has always existed, all the way back to Plato and Aristotle and the days of oral tradition. I think one of the reasons that storytelling has taken off in business in the last 10 or 15 years is we have a better understanding of how storytelling impacts our brain, the neurobiology of that. We're all wired for story. We're connected to Luke Skywalker and we want him to defeat Darth Vader. We want Daniel and Karate Kid to defeat Johnny in the Cobra Kai dojo. Our brains are wired for it. And so there's a release of dopamine, which sharpens our focus and improving memory coding. And I think the individuals and some of the best CEOs are the greatest storytellers because they know that the best story wins. And it's important to tell a clear and compelling story about where the company is, the challenges that it has, and where it's going. And I was at a company in 2010. Joe Army was a CEO, and during sales training, he would always say, "What's your story? What's your story?" And he challenged all of us to have a clear story that we would tell the customer. And I've never forgotten that.
That's great. And yeah, I think everybody's looking for someone to root for, right? So as a sales executive in marketing, you have to make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
What's one common misconception founders often make about sales strategies?
Well, I can only speak from my experience, but I think one common misconception that founders are tempted to make is that the best product will sell itself. The better the product is, the more sales will result. Sometimes they don't believe that the MVP, which means minimally viable product, they can interpret that to be maximum viable product, meaning that a better product, a better mousetrap will create the window for market penetration. I've seen this most recently in consulting and working with a small startup. They wanted to continue to iterate and improve the product. And what they really needed to do was find the smallest viable audience, get the market in play, learn from it, iterate, and continue to improve. And I think that's a misconception that founders can be tempted to believe that more is more, that the more versions or the fancier the product is, that it will lead to more sales. And I just don't think that's true.
You've worked at a really intense pace for years. How do you stay so sharp?
Well, I have to work at it. Like culture, it's an everyday thing, and burnout's a real thing. I remember when I was at Medtronic in 2011 or 12, we had a corporate coach come and talk to us about an article in the Harvard Business Review called "The Making of a Corporate Athlete," and Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz wrote that, and it captured our attention because most people watch sports heroes like Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and LeBron James are put up on a pedestal on an altar. And so they talk about the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And the physical, building stamina through sleep, nutrition, exercise; the emotional, cultivating resilience and emotional regulation. And that's really tough with the constant distraction with media. Mental, improving focus and cognitive control; and the spiritual, aligning work with personal values and purpose. I would add another element to that, and it would be play. I think there's play is underestimated in the role of balance and preventing burnout and doing our highest work. I know there's research recently that I read that individuals that have a hobby outside of work are more happy at work. And so I think it's that holistic approach. There's not just one answer, but it's multifactorial, and it's something that has to be focused on every day, or it can get away from a person.
Yeah, I would agree on all of that. Is there a specific quote that stayed with you throughout your leadership journey?
Yeah, in 2015, we were down in South Florida, and Simon Sinek came to speak to our sales organization, and he had just written his book, Leaders Eat Last, the year before. And one of his quotes was, "Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge." And that's always stayed with me. And as I have thought about it, it reminds me of something I think we all heard in first or second grade, and it's treat others as you would want to be treated. And there's so much truth to that. The simplicity of it is is really striking. It's hard to do that because we're human and we're not perfect and we can make mistakes all the time. But I think if we treat other people with care and respect and dignity, so much of the challenges at work I think will not be present. I think we can solve problems more quickly.
It's the golden rule.
Yeah, the
Always
golden
comes back to
rule.
that.
It
Yeah,
does.
truly, it does. So you mentioned football, and you did play NCAA Division One football, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
What's the one lesson from the field that you still use today in leadership?
Yeah. So I was a preferred walk-on. I wasn't given a scholarship. I once had scholarship offers. I had an injury in high school, and it was always a dream of mine. And I think the thing that I refer back to when I'm going through challenges at work or personally is the importance of resiliency, and that I've gone through some difficult times and I've come out the other side. And so you're not being treated like a five-star recruit. You have to earn your way. And I was fortunate enough to come into camp and beat out the starter and play several games. I got the injury bug again, but it's this line that I remember hearing when I was a kid: hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And so just the importance of hard work and resiliency, it's amazing what they can accomplish.
I would agree. I love that quote. Wow, I haven't heard that one for a minute.
Yeah,
I needed to
it's
hear
an old
that.
one. Yeah.
It's good. If you could instantly master one new skill outside of work, what would it be and why?
Well, master is a lofty aspirational goal. I don't know that I've mastered any skill, but I would say I'm focused now on increasing my digital literacy and fluency. And I've learned a lot from my peers and mentors in the last 6 months about the power of AI. And so I literally use AI every day. And I think it's not going away. I think there's a balance between, aptitude and fluency, and also there's an ethical component. And we just recently went to one of our kids' student teacher events, and they talked about how kids are using AI to write their papers. I think the other challenge with that is people can leverage AI too much, and they can lose the power of their voice, and they think they need to rely on AI to speak and think for them. But I think with big data, machine learning in the future, that's here to stay. And I think the individuals that can harness that and leverage that will be the better for it.
I'd agree. Well, that's the last of my questions. Could I rattle off a few rapid fire questions just to get a little
Sure,
more of your personality?
of course.
All right. Would you go for coffee or tea?
Definitely coffee.
Okay. How do you
N-
take your
n-
coffee? I think that says so much about a person.
Well, I love pour overs, but I don't always get a pour over. I drink Pete's coffee through a Keurig, and I use Laird Hamilton's superfood creamer, which is amazing. It's way too expensive, but it's a delicacy that I cheat on. And I stopped drinking my coffee by 11 a.m. because I try to sleep well, but I love my coffee.
I actually do know that creamer and it is very good.
Yeah.
It's good. What's the best sales win ever?
Hmm. The best sales win definitely involved part of my team, because I think the best wins involve a team. And it was the final months of my time at Medtronic. They had a workforce reduction, and there were several of us that worked on this large capital deal for a 20 hospital health system in the Midwest. And we ended up closing it the last week of the quarter, and it was the largest PO in the history of the company. And I'd been there for 10 years. And so it was so much fun. And we celebrated as a team. And I just will always remember that.
What's your go-to pump up song?
Oh my gosh. I love Jason Isabel. So he's not your pump up song, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely go back to the 80s Metallica.
Oh, great.
Um, yeah, I love or anything by Guns N' Roses. I actually went to a Metallica Guns N' Roses concert at the Redskins football stadium in 1989, and it was epic. It was unreal.
Oh, I can't imagine. Had to be such a performance. What's one word your team would use to describe you?
Hmm. I would say servant leader. I think when I have looked back at the recommendations that they've posted on LinkedIn and recommendations and referrals that they've given me, it's a servant leader. It's I think I think service and putting the team first, and I think a leader should be the first on and the last off, and that's I think the highest praise that I can receive because it puts the team first, it positions them for success, and I think leadership is service.
All right, last one. What's the best way to unwind after a high pressure quarter?
Hmm. I think it's hanging with my kids, whether it's playing basketball or throwing the football, and just spending time with the family. We live near the Harpeth River, so we may go fishing or walk our dog, who literally is part human, part canine. That's how we treat him. And so it's being with the family and just unwinding with them.
Well, that's awesome. Well, now I have to know what kind of dog is it?
So Clive is an English cream retriever. He's 90 pounds of stubborn, but he's well behaved when he's going to get a treat. But he really was destined to be a service animal. We just didn't pursue that route. But he has separation anxiety when we leave because he wants to be with us all the time. He's he's the best.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your insights across sales and marketing and even a little bit of fishing and coffee creamer. Um, I'm super excited to share it with the community.
Well, thank you. These were great questions, and I loved your follow up, and I love the work that Venturous is doing and is giving a voice to fractional work and to individuals that are looking to partner with startups. And I've been nothing but impressed with you and Steve and the team. Y'all are doing great work and adding tremendous value in the marketplace.
Well, thanks so much, Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.